Find the thing in life that makes you happy and pursue it. For me, that's politics. I don't know why, but it is. Ultimately, this is probably going to be the last video I make because I'm just a regular person, and as much as, I say I could be the next Prime Minister, I could do a political party, it absolutely goes nowhere unless you take a part. Reason being is I don't have big backers, I don't have sponsors, I don't have a trust fund, I don't even have a great job that, provides me more than a decent living. And ultimately, the scope of change is large, and I don't believe that most people will even watch to the end of this video, let alone support an underdog and challenge, the status quo that is politics in our country. And I hate that I have that opinion. I absolutely do, and I would want more than anything to be proven wrong in this. But changing the system involves putting our faith in someone not involved in the big three parties, because we had the Orange Wave, which was great. It got a lot of people involved in politics, and then the Liberal Party captured that and used that to give themselves a majority government, and really all they've done is reinforce the beliefs that you can't trust what politicians say. And first and foremost, when I say I want to become a politician, besides the fact that I'm, young and a member of the lower class, it turns off. People turn off, they tune out, because I don't look like a politician, I don't sound like a politician, I don't talk to you like a politician, and even if I did all of these things, you're not going to trust me because I say that I want to become a politician. And we've grown to develop all of these sort of no questions asked thoughts regarding politicians, like they love the platform, it's just a thing that they say to get you elected. And I bet, nobody would really believe me when I say that I don't care where you come from, or, really any of the details about you, because I'm not going to discriminate or target you based off of any of your physical characteristics. I really don't care. It shouldn't be something that's involved in politics. I've got a plan. I even wrote it all down. It's in a book. It so happens to be purple, which is kind of funny considering the wall behind me is purple, and the organization that I want to start, the color would be purple. So I've rambled on, and if you're still here, that's amazing. I was asked to put out a plan. It's a very basic plan, but ultimately I'm just doing what I can to survive, so let's go full transparency. I suffer from anxiety, I suffer from depression. I have a really hard time, just getting through the days, and as much as I would like to not, have politics as this main thing that I think about day in and day out, and I get really emotional about, because every time I look at something, I just see people getting taken advantage of, and it's, pardon the language, but fucking ridiculous that we allow this. Like, there is so much money that we give to our government, and it just gets wasted. It gets wasted. It's always study this, or, we'll see about that, or consultation on this, and things get more and more and more and more and more expensive. Technology increases, the population increases, but more and more and more we find that we can't deal with these services. And you can't believe in the big three parties, or even say, in a sense, the Green Party, because they've been getting tons of money and they can't do anything with it. And the other three parties, they get millions and millions of dollars in funding and rebates, and they're barely doing anything when you think about it. And the problem is that they all subscribe to the same beliefs. They're all playing by a very specific set of rules, and the ridiculous thing is that the entire structure was set up so that we do play by these rules, and if we just realize that we're allowed to change the rules and we're allowed to modify things, and, the people, bare bones, have a voice, and with the rising level of technology, our ability to play a part in what goes on in our world is only increasing. But the politicians don't really talk about it. The politicians basically, like, they pay lip service to you so that you could think that they know what they're doing or whatever, but then you look at their actions and they're just floundering around. Hell, I'll flat out admit, I've got a list of policies that I think would work. Are they, guaranteed golden gooses? Probably not. But the fact of the matter is I'm willing to work with anybody who wants to just sit down and have a conversation about them. You've got ideas that you think, things could be better, or these things won't work? Awesome, let's sit and have a conversation. And by and large, that's more than most of these politicians can say. And yes, you know what, there's good politicians, but there's a lot of bad ones, and unfortunately the bad ones are ruthless, and they control power. And unless we're willing to take that power away from them, there's nothing's really going to change. Like, we're going into corporate globalism, and unless we do something about that, we need to understand that, more power is going to be handed over to these big global nationalist corporations, or multinational corporations. And that's just the way it is. We continue to privatize things, we continue to say these services cost too much, and then we continue to find other people to deal with the problems for us instead of dealing with the problems ourselves. And there's this massive thought that, big government is bad and government is incompetent. And to a degree it is, but that's because there's no transparency, there's no accountability, and the people that we keep voting into power are using this system. And the last group that said that they were going to change the system basically spit that back in your face. So, yeah, I may be a lower class nobody in a sense, but I'm willing to talk to you face to face. I'm willing to listen to you regardless of your background, your beliefs, or any of the, factors that we could, I guess, discriminate you on, We need more real people getting involved in politics again. Because ultimately, those people are accountable in their communities, and, I'll just use myself as an example. Say if I did somehow magically win over the hearts and minds of the Canadian public, and got a political party together and became a member of Parliament, or, say, a Prime Minister. If I screw up, when the job's done, I've got no nice mansion to hide behind, I can't leave the country, I can't nothing. I'm going back to a regular job. Hopefully making a little bit more than minimum wage so I can, try and pay down some of my debt. But that's it, I'm a regular person, just like you and me. So, I've got this plan here, it's written in a notebook, it's a very basic plan. But the idea behind it is, it's the basis of a start of a discussion. But, like I said, if you can make it to the end of this video, and, that, congratulations to you, that's more than I expected. And I hate to be relatively pessimistic with this, but when you're struggling day in and day out to just get by, it's hard to not be pessimistic. I used to have this absolute faith in humanity, that we could accomplish such great things, but that's been chipped down and eroded over my experiences. I've got my own schwack of problems. I lost my job due to medical issues, I fell through the social safety net, and now I'm struggling to get by. And as much as all I want to do is work to fix these problems, I have no power. Zero. Zilch. My power is derived from you. It's whether or not you want to take a little bit of time out of your day to either engage with me, share the video, or support me financially. Which is horrible, right? But if I can even convince 2,000 to 3,000 people to fund a Patreon at $1 a month, that's $12 a year for somebody. That funds me to basically spend the next, 2 years-ish, it's a little bit shorter than that, but up until the next election, learning everything I can about Canada, our laws, our people, our diversity, our everything, day in, day out, and then communicate that to you. And the beautiful thing about it would be that if at any point in time you don't think I'm doing the job properly, you can pull the funding. And if if a bunch of people actually give me the funding and I don't go through with it, and you pull it, it all ceases to happen. So there's a direct relation between me and you, and me providing you the services that I'm saying I want to. And now it's not a political donation. That's like you would be donating to Les's educational fund so that he can learn more about the country in order to provide you a better service. And it's ridiculous, because I bet a lot of you turn up, oh, he's asking for money, he wants something. But I don't. If I had millions of dollars, I would be doing this all on my own dime. Like, there's too much money and bullshit involved in politics. It should be about real people having real conversations. It should be about transparency and accountability, and if everything's going to go up constantly and the costs and everything are going to constantly go up, we should at least know why, where that money's going. Stop telling us that you have to raise our taxes but also cut our services. There's fundamental problems with the system that we need to talk about and address. Because otherwise, if we continue to just take these hits, it's going to continue to get worse and continue to get worse, and what kind of world are we going to be living in then? We have a great opportunity to leverage technology to change it. So I've now talked for about 12 minutes, so if you're still with us, awesome. Here's what I think for my plan. First and foremost, we need to create a political organization. That means that 250 Canadian citizens need to back the political organization that I'm going to create. First and foremost, without revealing the name or starting any of that, the bare minimum that you could do if you are a Canadian and you think, hey, his plan could be a good idea at the end of this, is to throw me an email at the email address listed. Let me know that you would want to back it. If we can get 250 Canadians to back a party, we can then create a political organization, which means we can allow or start getting donations and directing funding. However, that is completely and utterly subjective to our ability to also get a candidate to be approved in a riding, which is 100 people from a riding need to back a political candidate. And I want to crowdsource all of this, because if we pull the average Canadian who is interested in politics but can't become one of the big parties because they have no backing, they don't know the ins and the outs and how to wheel and deal and bribe the right palms. Like, if we can do this all grassroots, we have an amazing opportunity to change the way that politics is done in this country. Because you know that none of the big parties are going to do it, because why? They profit and benefit off of the current political system, so regardless of what they say, they most likely won't change it. So yeah, I could ramble about this all day, but I'm just going to tell you the different planks, the different policies that I would want to work on, and then from there we'll see where this goes. If it gets absolutely no traction, you don't share it, like it, engage, whatever, then it dies. You don't hear from me again, I disappear, and the political landscape continues to be the political landscape, and it is what it is, and whatever, I'll find something else to put my energy towards, mainly surviving. But here it is. I'm just going to read this off this little book. So, these are in, of course, no particular order, but we need to restructure our social safety net so that Canadians are treated better and that the system provides better reintegration into society. We currently call it employment insurance. I would like to look at it as job reintegration or job transition. It's there to help you in some of the most roughest points in your time. The roughest points in your life. I fell through the social safety net. The look I got of it, or at least in Manitoba, people aren't treated well. You're jerked around. They don't want to give you benefits. They don't want to give you anything. They don't want to help you. Or at least if they do, I didn't see it. Most of the staff seems so burnt out. I got passed through personally 6 care workers. I think it was 6. I don't know. Every month I was getting a different email. New caseworker. Regardless. We should expand our healthcare to cover eye, dental, mental, and physio care. Regardless, across all points of our country. If these things are covered, then we're providing these services so that our citizens are in better health so they can do better work and they can be more productive. Because that's what, at least, it seems to be about, is, you should be the most productive member of society that you can. Providing these things helps with that. We need to develop a national purchasing program to help the provinces lower their expenses on the services they provide. This could be things like pharmaceutical drugs. It could be even things like police body cameras, or some people say toilet paper, but if there was a will to have a national toilet paper purchasing program, I'm sure somebody would have started that private company. I digress. Sorry, I go off on tangents. One thing leads into another. Everything's connected. Regardless, by developing a national purchasing program, all of our provinces, we as a country, can then start making purchases. The municipalities, cities, towns, hamlets, provinces, they're all under a corporate structure. But we don't treat them like that, and we don't leverage our ability to work on a national scale in order to do things, and we get taken advantage of because of that, flat out. We need to invest in transportation infrastructure with the aim of lowering the cost for interprovincial travel and trade. The cheaper it is to move from one province to another, whether that be for a vacation or a job, the better off we will all be. The fact that it costs, a couple of days' wage for the average worker to travel from one province to the other makes it incredibly restrictive for us to really grow as a country. And the more that we lower our limitations on travel, I think the better off our economy will be, the better off our people will be, and the more opportunities that people will have to meet other people from around the country and build their perspectives on these people's lives, what they experience, all this sort of thing. Now, giving subsidies to a company to buy an electric truck doesn't work. Why don't you build the electrical infrastructure along the number one instead of privatizing that? That way at least we keep, some costs controlled. We need to develop a national education program to provide free education and improve access to educational facilities and programs. We have one of the most highly educated countries in the world, apparently, or populations in the world. I think we could do better. I think that our ability to retrain people for jobs right now is incredibly restrictive, and it could be improved upon. And I believe that by providing free education and increasing the access to that education, we will end up creating more opportunities in our society. And yes, it does have costs, but I'm pretty sure that those costs can be recouped through taxation. Because ultimately, by providing people with a better education and allow them to live in a better province, by providing people with the education to work a better job, they will essentially end up being in a higher tax bracket, and the taxes that they pay could be recouped and used to pay for that person's education. We need to start investing in people, not private companies. We need to invest in telecommunications infrastructure with the aim of improving access to the internet. Having good access to the internet means you have a good access to learn things and communicate with people, and the more that we learn and the more that we communicate, the better off we will be as a society and as a species. Flat out. Anybody who argues with that, I don't even know what to say with you. If you have an argument, please, let me know, because I don't see any downsides into this. And on that note, every time that we give somebody a subsidy for infrastructure, they're just taking advantage of us. We're basically telling a business, here's some money, go build this, and in good faith maybe it will all work out. And most of the time it doesn't. With the amount of money that our people have put into all of these different subsidies and stuff, it's amazing that our services cost so much. It's amazing the tiny bit of access that we have, and furthermore, our government can't generate money. So we keep giving all these other companies to generate money, meanwhile all we can do to generate money is take it from the average person. Ridiculous. Anyway, we need to restructure the carbon tax to minimize the impact on citizens and encourages business to invest in greener solutions. Charging somebody 5 cents for a plastic bag is BS. Charging them a couple of cents for a can, a couple of dollars for a TV, no. Turn that back on the corporation, because when they have to start paying for every single bag, every single cup, every single non-recyclable item that they purchase or build, they're going to change their habits, and they're going to change their habits really quickly. Putting more costs on the consumer and hoping that the consumer votes with their dollar instead is a ridiculous way to deal with things. Yes, okay, it could be restrictive and some businesses may no longer choose to deal with us, or, some things may become a little bit more expensive, but in the long run it's a better solution because it actually combats the problem instead of telling the average consumer, well, if you don't go out and buy this, companies, you don't buy their reusable bag or do this or whatever, then you're going to get charged more. Well, why can't those companies just start using better recyclable methods? We have the technologies. Like, it's very frustrating. Very, very frustrating. Here's a big one. We need to restructure the income tax system to reduce taxes on all Canadians with an aim of removing taxes for the lower class. If we don't tax the lower class, it provides more incentives for the government through social services, especially like, say, free education, to get the lower classes into a higher tax bracket, which means more education, more access to basic services, and a better quality of life. We don't want people to be poor, because usually that has a lot of negative things attached to it. We want people to be into the middle class or the wealthy. We want people to not have to worry about where their next meal is coming from, how they're going to pay the rent for the next month. These are all very simple things. If we lower taxes, you have more money to spend. And yes, okay, people say raise taxes on the rich, but then the rich find other ways to move their money, hide their money, do whatever, corporations leave, etc. Lower the taxes that these people pay. The less taxes that they pay, maybe the more inclined they might be to start their own community services or charities or whatnot. We can't just constantly take money from some of the most intelligent, hardest workers in our society and say that we're going to repurpose that for the poor people or the lower class people or the middle class people or some foreign country or whatever and expect that they're just going to be okay with it. Like, you wonder why politicians are dominated by rich people and big business and all that. It's because they back these people because these people are willing to help them sustain their wealth. We have to tell them, you can keep your wealth. You work hard, you generate, you provide jobs. Awesome. We're going to lower your taxes. Invest more in our country. Build more things. Employ more people. We're all in this together. If we all benefit, we will all go further. I'm not saying I'm anti-capitalist. I'm saying that the capitalism that we have now is a very negative form of capitalism, and we can change that. We can make it a better form of capitalism where more people benefit from it. And the government shouldn't have its hooks into businesses. It should do very little for regulating businesses outside the general will of the people and to maintain, health and safety standards. Some things I might say could be contradictory from here and there. If they are, call me on it. We'll have a conversation. If I need to correct something, I'll correct something. I'm not backtracking. We're having a conversation. I'm growing as an individual. Hopefully, we can move forward with all this. Anyway, we need to restructure the legalization of cannabis with the aim of improving regulation while lowering government involvement in the market. Period. The government shouldn't be involved as much as possible. Let any person grow it, have distribution hubs that the government owns in order to apply the taxes and then the associated health regulations and testing. Let anybody sell it. Keep, similar laws. You have to be 18 plus. But if we do this, it provides the greatest opportunity for the most growth in the market. And it allows the government to be hands-off. Less red tape, less restrictions, and it allows the most opportunity for it to be, or for us as a society to really take advantage of this product, I guess. We need to increase the research and development funding to better position Canada as we progress into a new era of technology. We're barely even touching the surface on the conversations that we should be having regarding all of these new sort of futuristic technologies, let alone properly researching and developing anything to go along with them. We are almost completely and utterly hands-off in allowing private corporations to develop all this country, or all this technology for us and then tell us how we're going to use it and stuff. And that's all well and fine to a degree, but what are we doing in regards to artificial intelligence, robotics, bioengineering? Like, these things need to be talked about. We need to figure out how we're going to regulate them and deal with them as a society so that we can at least put the necessary safeguards in place. Right? Like, just as an example, we develop artificial intelligence along with robotics, but we don't develop any sort of electromagnetic pulse weaponry. So what happens if AI does go rogue, does get it into any of these sort of killer robots, or even just the cars, right? If it goes rogue, infects the self-driving cars, what are we supposed to do about that? Our police or military have no means of dealing with this besides with conventional weaponry, and more conventional weaponry is becoming obsolete. So there's just one, big red flag. We need to adhere to a higher standard of conduct for all party members with the aim of improving the function of government. Politics is an absolute fucking joke. You watch them during question period, it's fucking pathetic. I swear that our Prime Minister is more of a Jedi with the way that he does his Jedi mind tricks. Like, you ask him a question and he is so good at deflecting. Like, that's wrong. These people are cackling and jeering and elbowing each other, and it's bullshit. They make too much money and they have too much responsibility to the general public to be behaving like children. Period. Like, now, we need to hold a referendum for proportional representation, and if a majority of Canadians are in favour, we need to adjust our electoral system accordingly. This first past the post system doesn't work. It's making more and more people alienated, and especially with the way that campaign financing and everything works, it is incredibly difficult for a small party to get anywhere in this. The Greens have been throwing money at their party for years and have barely gotten anywhere. If we had a better system in place, it wouldn't be as much of an issue. And as I said at the beginning of this video, I don't have any money to fund a campaign. I don't have connections, I don't have nothing. I have you. So if you share this, if you like this, you pass it on to people, that is the most powerful thing. Because what we need to remember is that ideas and people and organizations are given power through you, the average person. You decide to stand behind somebody, you're giving them power. If 10,000 people, 20,000 people, 1 million people stand behind somebody, you're giving them power. My voice means nothing. But if I have a good chunk of Canadians, even a few thousand people, that go, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about, or to a degree he knows what he's talking about, and he's at least willing to talk to us and treat us like, real people, like individuals who have thoughts and feelings, emotions. I want him to work with us and be a member of Parliament. You're giving me the power to be able to stand up and represent you and fight for us all. But without your power, without you saying, hey, I stand behind you, I'm just another voice on the internet. We need to improve communications and relations between all levels of government. When I say I want to create a political organization, this organization spans federal, provincial, municipal, everything. We'll run candidates in every single election that we can. And local candidates too. I'm not talking about, grabbing somebody from Winnipeg and throwing them in Ontario and saying, you're gonna do good. No, it's all local people. By the people, for the people. It's a really simple concept, but it would work. Because only the people that are in those communities know how to deal with the people in those communities and know what their issues are. I'm just saying I'm the one who's willing to stand at the front right now and take all the cannon fire and deal with all the abuse and the criticism and whatever. I'll field all that. I'll figure out how to work out all the problems, and we'll sit down and we'll have the conversations. But when we say, oh, well, this provincial government, even though they're the same sort of organization as the federal and they don't really talk or whatever, it's bullshit. We need to work together on all levels of government in order to fix these things, and we have massive problems that need to be fixed. There's tons of conversations that need to be had. My camera cut out, so of course this video is going to be in multiple parts, so I'm not really sure where it had exactly cut out, but let's start again. Now, this one I don't really think I've ever heard a politician actually say this, but we need to work with the First Nations or Indigenous peoples of Canada to develop a strategy to fix government relations and move toward a better future for all of Canada's people. I would be willing to travel to every single reserve in Canada. I would be willing to talk to every single person that lives on those reserves to figure out what the proper solution is. If given the opportunity to be the Prime Minister with a party in government, I would move forward with renegotiating with every single First Nation. We need to stop worrying about what happened in the past and all of the good and the bad and everything. We need to sit and figure out a plan for the future. I would be willing to do that, regardless of how hard it is. Because if we don't do it, things will only get worse. It's a simple concept. All of it's really simple. It's just a lot of work. We need to invest in the tourism industry in order to increase the number of visitors to Canada, which will improve the Canadian economy. We have a massive, beautiful country. We have a relatively weak dollar. The more people that come here and spend their money, the better off we're all going to be. Small to large business. It only benefits us. And by increasing tourism, we also increase our standing on the world stage. It's a no-brainer. Like, people love to come to Canada. People apparently love Canadians. Let's leverage that. We need to restructure our environment and recycling taxes in order to minimize the impact to Canadians and encourage manufacturers to adopt more environmentally friendly processes and materials. This goes off of what I said with the carbon taxes. We need to start penalizing manufacturers if they're going to use things that don't do good for the environment. We shouldn't be encouraged to buy throwaway crap, because it's exactly that, it's crap. We have the ability to make great things, do great things. But if we don't ask for it, then we're not going to get it. Because it's all about the almighty dollar and how much money you can make. And unfortunately, for the most part, companies show that when it comes down to it, they will cut the quality of a product to make a buck. Just as an example, I having worked in maintenance, there's light poles that we've had to deal with. If they had used a screw instead of a rivet, when they pull the chain out, it's like a 15-cent repair instead of having to go buy a whole new unit and then throwing that one in the landfill. It's just simple things. I don't know how exactly we're going to encourage, companies to do this, but we need to start having the conversation about it. We need to improve animal rights laws and increase funding to animal rescue shelters and medical facilities in order to improve how we treat and manage animals within Canada. Whether it's a pet, whether it's an agricultural animal, whether it's a wild animal, it doesn't matter. We don't treat them as well as we could, and because of this, and because of, sort of public mentality or perception, there's a lot of horrible things that are happening that don't need to happen. And if we start, having more of an active role in these discussions, especially with the government, we could probably do better. As an example, in Winnipeg, our Humane Society got a massive sort of facelift, but we keep having issues with space. Well, at no point in time has the government ever said, hey, why don't we build a big-ass facility outside the city where we can have, proper space for all of these dogs to run and stuff. They take the minimum possible steps in order to solve the problem because of money. Everything is tied to the money. There's not enough funding. Well, we need to figure this out. We need to get the funding to where it needs to go. On that note, the fact that apparently, 154 reserves are managed by third parties is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. You could just... Detroit shows. Do not put a private entity in control of a community, because it never ends well. The company is designed to make money. That money will be made at the expense of the community, period. If a community is having financial issues, we need to sit down, go through the books, expose the books, so that everybody can see them, we can find the problems. We have a massive country with tons of smart individuals. If we work together, even a fraction of us, we can solve the problems. throwing more money and more money and more money and then putting private entities in control of everything is not a good solution, because it only increases, it only increases costs. We need to legalize prostitution in order to better protect Canadians while freeing up resources that can be used to combat human trafficking in Canada. It's a really simple one. It's like drugs. We legalize prostitution. All of the people who want to work in the sex industry can now have a safe, law-abiding way of doing it. They can hire the proper protection, work in the proper facilities, all of that. It's a really simple solution, but you have to just do it. Then, once we free up all of those resources, we can then direct them to other, to actually combating the human trafficking problem. Because once we stop worrying about Joe Blow just going down the street to get a blowjob or whatever, we can actually worry about, protecting people, the kidnappings, the murders, the child and human trafficking period is just, it's horrible. And it's getting worse. And we need to start talking about this and exposing the problem instead of covering it up or shuffling around resources. It's disgusting. Especially if you try and think about what the people who are currently in those positions are dealing with. We need to adjust our foreign policy with the aim of improving Canadian relations with all nations on Earth, on this planet. We need to stop being violent. We need to start talking, start being peaceful, and start working together. The more we work together, the less division there is, and the less chance that, something's going to go horribly wrong, and we're going to be the target of violent actions. If we can raise our own standard of living so that very few people are wanting or needing or can access the services that they need in order to survive, or if they're having a crisis, access the support systems that they need, you're less likely to create extremists. You're less likely to create, mentalities that are willing to go and pursue violence in order to get their point across or their objective dealt with. And if we only deal with countries in a relatively positive manner, they have less and less reason to actually want to do us harm or take advantage of us, because we're mutually benefiting from the relationship. We need to develop a strategy to minimize the negative impacts of emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and robotics. Like I said earlier, the more we start talking about this, the more we actually can sit down and hammer out a policy, the better off we're going to be in the end. It's probably only a matter of time before somebody creates an artificial intelligence that goes rogue, and then we're in trouble. Because just as a simple thought experiment, if an artificial intelligence was, say, created in order to maximize efficiencies and things, and then it somehow goes rogue and decides that, starts looking at humans, we're incredibly inefficient creatures, especially if you look at our politics and the way we do things, right? And it's a logical conclusion that if you reduced or removed our population, that the world would be a better place. Because we're not there. We destroy things currently. And it's not our fault per se, because that's... everything that has been developed has created this problem. Which is fine, it is what it is. But we gotta start looking to fix it. If we develop safeguards and stuff, this technology, the chance of it having a very negative impact on us is less and less. Just look at the show Black Mirror. That shows tons of ways that the technologies could go bad. And yes, we, as individuals are having these conversations, but there's very little going on at the governmental level, and there's very little going on nation to nation. To get back with the whole, international relationships and stuff, the United Nations is a joke. It barely does anything. It barely wields any power. Any time that you see that, one of these foreign leaders is up that, the Western world doesn't like, they just walk out. Diplomats shouldn't be walking out of fucking meetings. You are a diplomat to represent us. The second that you walk out, you're spitting on the face of everything that we stand for. If we don't sit at the table and at least listen to what the other side of the table wants to say, there's no possibility of having a peaceful resolution to anything. We need to work with the military to make procurements more efficient and increase funding to improve effectiveness and morale. Anything you really read about the military says that they don't have any of the equipment that they need, and more it's just being politicized, and it's bullshit. We ultimately need to have a grand number of conversations, but there's two. One, we need to talk to the military about what exactly they need in order to better defend Canada. Keywords here being defense. Defensive capabilities. I don't care about offensive. We shouldn't be offensive. We need to defend ourselves first and foremost. The second thing we need to do is start talking to them about what they think they need, or what they know that they need, in order to transition into this future. Lasers are becoming a thing. Artificial intelligence, robotics, computers, satellites. All of this is playing more and more of a role. Drone technology. If we don't start discussing with our military what we can do in order to better protect ourselves, we're going to lag so far behind it's not even funny, because we're just not going to know how to deal with it. Or we might know how to deal with it, but our ability to be able to get the technologies and the infrastructure in place to deal with it, we can't even buy them proper fighter jets or boots. Why is it a running thing in the military that they can't get proper boots? Maybe that's just a running joke, and, you shouldn't believe everything that you read. But damn, the entire military procurement process is a joke, and it's way too political, and it doesn't need to be. We need to fix that. So I would work with the military and figure out exactly what they need, and then work to get it to them. We can't rely on foreign companies or nations to help us, because if we continue to rely on other nations and private entities to provide us with everything that we need to defend ourselves, we will, as we're already seeing, slowly give up our right to make our own decisions. And we've only had the right to make our own decisions for a very short period of time, and all of those rights are being clawed back because we're too apathetic to deal with it. Now this is going to be a controversial one, but we need to remove the visible minority law because segmenting society by racial characteristics is in itself discrimination and denies equal opportunity to all Canadians. As I said at the beginning of this video, I don't care who you are, what color your skin is, what you believe in, what your sexual identity is, any of it. It doesn't matter, because ultimately you're an individual. You're a Canadian citizen or another member of the world who just so happens to be watching this, and that's what matters. And discriminating based off of what you look like is BS. If you really want to ensure that companies hire essentially the right individual for the job, we should be trying to figure out what kind of a law that we can pass to remove all determining characteristics that aren't applicable to the actual job, and then make that a law. Because as it currently stands, I am a white male. Or, sorry, I am a male that is Caucasian in appearance. So I am on the bottom rung of being able to get a job in a diverse workplace because of the color of my skin and what genitals I was born with. And that makes no sense. That's not fair. That's not Canadian. A business should be allowed to hire the best individual for the job. Period. It doesn't matter anything else. The problem that we have with discrimination is a societal problem that we are having conversations about, and passing laws will not help the situation. We already have anti-discriminatory laws and all of that already in place. We don't need to be tacking on more laws. We are having a conversation as a society which is removing the barriers on discrimination. We just need to continue to have that conversation, and slowly, over time, with education and communication, this discrimination issue will cease to exist, because that is what the populace wants. And the last point that I have here on this of my long list of planks is we need to develop a national childcare program with the aim of providing free childcare to all Canadians. It's one of those things that if we can provide it, that it only does good. We are currently bringing in a ridiculous amount of immigrants because our current population is not sustainable. We're not having enough kids. First and foremost, I have nothing against immigrants, and if from everything I've said you think that, I don't know what to say to you. But the fact that more and more Canadians apparently don't want to have kids is a bad indicator, because that speaks to a larger problem with society as a whole. And we can temporarily fix it through immigration, but that's a short-term solution. And the problem is we keep electing governments that have short-term solutions. It's all about getting elected next. You know, with the organization... Actually, hold on, let me just finish this whole childcare thing and then I'll go into this. But if you have a kid and you know that you're guaranteed able to get childcare in a reasonable amount of time, and it's going to be provided for free, which, once again, we can recoup this. We pay more than enough taxes, we spend more than enough money in our government. We can pay for this. If you know that when you have a kid, you don't have to worry about potentially sacrificing your income in order to be a stay-at-home parent, or working 2 or 3 jobs just to provide that childcare, or even if you can get childcare, you're more likely to have a kid. If we can improve the standard of living in Canada, then that's only improving our chances for us all to have better lives. We need to start investing in our people and the younger generations, because ultimately they're the ones who are going to be inheriting everything that's been left to them. And I think I'm a millennial, I think I fit into that category, I don't feel like a millennial, but regardless, everybody always shits on the millennials. But CSIS just recently said that the millennials are probably going to be the torchbearers of, you know, the next wave of changing the future, which probably we are, but if if all the older generations aren't willing to work with us, we're going to get nowhere, because we only know so much, and we need your help to transition into this. And then likewise, the younger generations are going to need, our help to transition into what we've created. And ultimately, we need to start investing in our people again. We need to start investing in long-term solutions. And right now, if this party gets started, I will be the leader, because I am willing to do what it takes to get the party to where it needs to be in order to win an election. And I am willing to take all the responsibility that comes along with that. If I develop a political party, and if we get recognized by being able to run candidates, they don't have to be elected, we just actually have to be able to get registered candidates, and this election doesn't go well, I will fully and utterly step back and then put my hat into the ring in order to run for the leadership race. And every single political candidate that our party sponsors, it's the same thing. We will have fair and open elections in order to determine who is going to be our candidate in each area. I don't want power. I don't want money. I'd be more than happy with a couple acres and a farm. But the fact of the matter is that there's massive things that need to be changed. And I don't know why, but politics is all I can think. Day in, day out, it's politics. It's how to fix things. I'm constantly reading news and, policies and all this. I want to continue my education. I can't think of anything more exciting than being able to represent the millions of people in our beautiful country and be able to meet them and learn about them and build my perspective and my education and my knowledge. I have adrenaline coursing through my system because this is the most exciting yet scariest thing for me to talk about. Because if you're even still here, if you're even still watching this video, that's commendable, because I'm pretty sure we're over the 40-minute mark at least now. And if you just take this video and you pass it to somebody and you say, hey, watch this video, that single act will change my life. And if enough people make those acts, it could change your life too. Because this only works if we do it together. And we're at a turning point. It's like there's a fork in the road, and we as a society, we as a species, need to start figuring out where we're going. And I really hate to say it, but in my personal opinion, if we continue with the status quo, it's not going to end well, because things are only going to get more expensive, people are only going to become more disenfranchised, and it's only going to lead to a higher possibility of something horrible happening, whether that be, extremists popping up and becoming into government, or, terrorist incidents, or if you look at the geopolitical landscape right now, we are marching towards World War III. We're not slowing down, we're not trying to find peaceful solutions. Canada is in a perfect position to be able to try and mitigate the possibility of going into World War III, but we're not. We're too busy playing up to, people's feel-goods. Fuck that. You shouldn't feel good about what's going on right now. It's horrible. Absolutely horrible. But of course, not many people take to the streets anymore because it's growing harder and harder and harder to be able to express your opinion and get it heard and be out there without being discriminated against. But I've finally come to the point where I'm not concerned if somebody wants to shout me down or throw piss at me or whatever these other horrible things that happen to some of these people who speak their mind. I don't care. I am fully confident in my ability that I can go and talk to anybody, anywhere in the world, and walk away with a relatively decent encounter, because I'm not going to approach the conversation with anything negative. I'm not going to push anything negative on anybody. I am only about having a conversation, building perspective, and walking away knowing more, having a better understanding, and then being able to use that all to enact a better change upon the world. And it all sounds feel good and whatever, but you could say at this point, well, what do you have, Les? Are you a lawyer? No. Do you have a degree in anything? No. I haven't even fucking graduated high school because I experienced a massive amount of bullying between teachers and the student body that I couldn't, with my anxiety and everything, be in school. I couldn't access counselors, I couldn't access nothing. My family was non-existent. But I'm right here talking to you about things that the current elected politicians don't even talk to you about. They've got degrees. A lot of them are lawyers. They don't want to straight talk to you. They don't want to be transparent. They don't want to allow you to know their flaws because of fear that they will be used against them. I don't care if you know my flaws. I'm a person just like you. I've got problems. I've got vices. We all do. We're all people. And the sooner that we admit that and start talking about it all, we'll be better. Society is moving leaps and bounds forward. But our politics is staying the same. It's chugging along and only making the necessary changes in order to appease you so that you continue to get elected. Did you know that as long as you can capture 2% of the national vote or 5% of your ridings vote, you get a 50% rebate on what you spent on your 50% of your expenses of your political organization are then reimbursed to you. So these big politicians say, hey, give us this money, give us this power, put us in power, give us a majority government, which, say, with the Liberals is what we did. And it's more money and more money and more money. And I'm going to use the Liberals as an example because they sold us on so much stuff. They're having their convention. It's in Halifax. Well, most people on the West Coast, in the center of the country, who are relatively poor can't go, not to mention the fact that it's a $500 fucking ticket just to get through the door. Where's the transparency in the politics with that? We give millions upon millions and millions of dollars in salaries and benefits and staff and to all of these damn politicians. But they selectively choose who they pander to get the votes to put them back in power. I don't want to be a politician, but I'm willing to step up and say what needs to be said and do what needs to be done and treat you with the respect that you should be treated. And yes, I get a little bit uppity, and I go off on tangents and stuff, but I'm a human. This stuff emotionally affects me. Unfortunately, I have too much empathy. I feel bad that people are homeless or addicted to drugs or whatever, and, you know, the average person will probably tell you, well, go out and do something about it. Well, this is me doing something about it, because I've looked at everything. And the fact of the matter is that, yeah, you can make little changes at the bottom, and you can try and work your way through, but all of the really big changes happen at the top. They happen at the governmental levels. If we can change the way that the federal and the provincial governments do things, the way that the regulatory bodies do things, we can provide more opportunities for things to be better. Trickle-down economics is kind of bullshit. Because then you're essentially saying that the people who benefit most off of continuing the status quo by continuing the status quo will then somehow make everybody else's lives better, but it's still the same thing. It's just wrapped in a different package. The system needs change. We can do that change peacefully. But if we don't do the change peacefully, we don't start having that conversation, we've probably only got a couple of more election cycles before things start to get really bad. Especially because we have very little power on the world stage. And unfortunately, some of our neighbors are continuously stirring the pot for their own self-interest. And the longer that goes on and nobody says anything, the worse off of a position that we're going to be in. We all share one world. And last I checked, we don't have any colonies on other planets. We can barely even get spaceships into the goddamn atmosphere right now. Or upper atmosphere, lower orbit, whatever. We are struggling as an advanced society. And we're at a tipping point. We either make the change, or start making the change, and having the conversation to accelerate ourselves into a better place. Or we are going to continue to decline because that is what the data is showing is happening. Now, here's one really important aspect that I'm just going to leave everything on. I may not know much. I may not be highly educated. I am willing to educate myself on as much stuff as humanly possible relating to our country and the way that things work before the next election. I will fully admit that I'm not perfect. However, politicians are supposed to be the mouthpieces of the country. Politicians should be providing ideas on the future path that we could take and talking to the populace about how best to go about that. We have more than enough intelligent people in this country that we can solve our problems. And if I say, for example, say something really dumb, there's going to be somebody out there in our country or the greater world that's going to point to the flaw, and then we can work towards a solution that is key. Transparency and accountability. If anything I say sticks, pass this message on. And engage with the people that you're passing it to, because if you just share the link, it doesn't mean nearly as much as if you say, hey, take a couple minutes out of your day and watch this. Could change your life. Could change my life. If you really think this is worth a go, and you're a Canadian citizen, throw an email to patisonpost@gmail.com and let me know that you would stand behind a political organization that I would start. And if you think that this could be a really bloody entertaining experience, go to my Patreon and give me $1 a month. If I can get enough people together so that, that can sustain me while doing all of this, I'm going to continue to make it cut out once again. So, if you throw me $1 a month, at the bare minimum, I will continue to make these videos, and maybe you could get some amusement, because when it comes to reality TV, besides the fact, of down south, it's very hard to compete with how entertaining their politics can be, this could be, some really great Canadian reality TV. So, thank you for your time. If you've managed to watch all of the different videos that make up this one giant video, you have my respect. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. I really appreciate it. I am really excited to see what we could do as a society and as a species. I'm sure before I'm at retirement age, we're probably going to be an interplanetary species if we play our cards right. That's exciting. I grew up with Star Trek and Star Wars. Bring it on. I'd love to be on a spaceship. That'd be so cool. But there's a lot of things that we need to do before that. Alright, well, you take care. Maybe I'll see you again. Stay safe. Stay sane. Au revoir. Oh, and this was just me throwing up my hand, going like goodbye. There wasn't any negativeness associated with it. I'm sorry, I'm constantly concerned about image because everything is so politically correct. I feel like I gotta go on tangents and explain everything. But this video is done.